Before I get into any theory, I want to take a moment just to look at the image. In the image, we're in a public park. A space is usually meant for play, social interaction, and a shared activity. In the center, there's a kid holding a soccer ball, ready to play. But around them, the kids are sitting nearby, but all of them are focused on their phones. When you first look at the image, it looks like a familiar critique of people being on their phones too much screen time, but I think that reading into this is too simple, and it kind of misses what the image is really saying about social life in this digital society. Introduction and interpretation. What stands out most to me in this image is that the kid in the middle has done exactly what society is kind of pushing kids to do nowadays. The society's telling kids to go outside and play. The kid went outside. The kid brought something for the group to play. And the kid's also present and open to interacting to others. But the issue is that the kid's still alone. That's what makes this image a bit discomforting. It's not showing the kids refusing to socialize. It's showing that even when someone tries, the social world doesn't always respond anymore. The other kids also aren't being mean or excluding this kid or bullying them. They're just disengaged. They don't care. They're physically in the same spaces, but their minds are kind of on their phones and other places. So rather blaming individual behavior, I kind of interpret this image as a critique of how digital culture reshapes public spaces and social expectations. The park still exists, but the shared understanding of what you're supposed to do in a park and how you're supposed to use it has kind of changed. Thesis. This image illustrates how digital culture reshapes social life by shifting responsibility for connection onto the individuals while weakening collective norms. Through Bauman's concept of liquid modernity, Durkheim's theory of anomie, and Simmel's blase outlook, the image reveals how public spaces persist physically but fail socially, leaving individuals isolated and even more when they attempt to engage offline. This thesis of the image shows how digital culture weakens collective social life by shifting responsibility for connections onto the individuals, while norms and public engagement kind of go away. I'm going to analyze this using the three theorists I just mentioned. And the first one we're going to kind of dive into is Bauman and liquid modernity. Zygmunt Bauman, he came up with the concept of liquid modernity and is developed in his book that we talked about in class, Liquid Modernity from the 2000s, and it describes a society where social structures become unstable and flexible rather than solid and binding. Bauman kind of argues that individuals are increasingly expected to manage their own lives, identities, relationships, all by themselves, and this can feel like freedom, but it also means that the responsibility to manage a group and for others kind of weakens. We can see that clearly in this image. The kid is holding a soccer ball. He's taking the responsibility for being social. They've made the effort, but there's no shared expectation that anyone else should participate. Bauman explains this that in liquid modernity, people become free agents, but that freedom often leads to social fragmentation rather than connection. Digital technology increases this by offering highly individualized forms of engagement that don't really require commitment to other people. The kids on their phone aren't doing anything wrong. They're simply taking advantage of the benefits modernity offers, but the issue is that it doesn't provide a community like the normal world back then would. This is an important point. The problem isn't a lack of motivation, but it's the absence of norms that once supported a communal living idea. Public versus private life. Bauman also writes about how modern life blurs a boundary between public and private life. Digital devices allow people to carry private worlds with them at all times, no matter where they really are, whether it's a park or somewhere else. That's exactly what's happening in this image. Even though the kids are in a public park, their attention is pulled into their private phones. The park becomes less of a shared environment for all and more of kind of like a backdrop in some VR world. And this idea, digital culture doesn't eliminate the public space, it just kind of changes what it's for. Public space is still there, but it becomes not really for socializing, so to say. Next on to Durkheim and anomie. Emil Durkheim's concept of anomie, which is first introduced in Suicide in 1897, helps explain how the situation feels on a social and also an emotional level. Durkheim uses anomie to describe a condition where social normalities lose kind of their power. Usually it's because society is changing too quickly. When this happens, people aren't sure what's expected of them or how other people will respond. In this image, the kid with the soccer ball is following kind of what you're supposed to do in the past. If you go to the park and you bring a ball, there's going to be people to play with you. But in today's world, that doesn't really work. There's no clear rule telling other kids that they should join in, and no clear signal telling the kid with the ball what to do next now that people won't join in. That's anomie kind of defined. It's a breakdown of shared expectations. Importantly, this isn't about rejection. No one's being hostile to the kid, no one's bullying them. The isolation becomes from normlessness, not people being mean. A sociologist, Robert Merton, also explored this idea. He explains that anomie can occur when cultural goals still exist, but the social means to achieve them no longer function the same way they used to. That fits here perfectly. We still value being social, but the conditions that make it possible are kind of changing and almost going away. Next up is Simmel and the Blase outlook. George Simmel's concept of the Blase outlook from his 1903 essay, The Metropolis and Mental Life, helps explain the emotional tone of kids sitting on the benches. Simmel argued that the constant stimulation dulls emotional responses. People don't stop perceiving differences, they stop caring about them. That's what we see in this image. The kids are on their phone, aren't actively rejecting to play soccer, they just don't care. This compared to the constant stimulation and fun of scrolling and social media and things like that, the kids just don't really want to do it. And that's kind of explains why disengagement always doesn't look dramatic, but it can be quiet, passive, and normalized like you see in the image. Simmel also points out that physical closeness can actually make emotional distance more noticeable. That's why the kid with the soccer ball feels isolated. Everyone's right there, but you can't really reach them. So it's kind of very isolating. Next, we're on to the conclusion. When you put all these theories together, the image becomes much more than a critique of screen time. Looking at what Bauman said, he helps explain the structural shift towards the individual responsibility in the weakened collective life. Durkheim explains that the resulting experience of anomie, confusion, isolation, and normallessness. And Simmel explains the emotional conditions that allows us to persist, indifference produced by overstimulation. The image ultimately suggests that just telling people, and especially kids, just to go outside and do things is not enough. Without shared norms and collective engagement, individual effort can't really build a new social life. Digital culture doesn't eliminate this community outright, it just reshapes it in ways that people aren't really physically together. In ways that people are physically together but socially alone. And you see this kind of the shift going online where people aren't physically together and they're socially together. So it's like a weird swap that might not be for the best, but it's kind of what this image describes, and it's kind of what's weird about it.